there's some real positives to having OCD.
Interesting to think about because it's such a controversial way to think and talk about it. Even the positive has negatives too. So
Tyler Falcoa, the host of Please Excuse My OCD, a mental health advocate focusing on OCD and self-authenticity.
What actually is OCD?
I got diagnosed at the age of 10, but I lived my whole teenage life without knowing that what I got diagnosed with was actually what I was struggling with. I basically went to my doctor and was telling him my deepest, darkest fears. And I was like, he's going to throw me into either a hospital or he's going to call the cops and put me in the backseat. So as soon as you start to have intrusive thoughts and you don't realize that they're intrusive thoughts, you don't realize that they're not all true, you start to believe them.
So unbelievable to imagine that you're there thinking that you caused your family home to burn down.
It was a school night and she's like, you need to go to bed. I was so mad. I'm 10 years old. I was so mad. I was like, I hate this house. I hate this room, my room. I hate my bed. And then the next day, half the house is completely gone in the fire. With OCD specifically, a lot of it is reassurance seeking. I was Googling for 8 hours a day about trying to figure out answers in Buddhism.
How bad does it get sometimes?
Before I was on medication, it would take me 20 minutes to a half hour to leave any room. I was afraid that I would somehow not turn the lights off the right way and it would cause a fire. And so on my worst days, I wouldn't be able to leave rooms. I wouldn't be able to leave the house. And the best way that I deal with it is
Tyler, welcome to the Success School podcast. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here. And I know there's a lot we are going to talk about today that's super important. I know there's a lot in your journey and your story that is super inspiring and can give value to the people listening. I want to start right in at the deep end with OCD. I know that you have a podcast, Excuse My OCD. And I know it's something that you openly speak about, bring awareness to, and really try and help people understand. Because I think one thing I've learned, and I want to shout out Helen Hill, our community manager who connected the two of us. One of the things I learned through Helen is the amount of misconceptions and misunderstandings that most of us in the general public have when it comes to OCD. I'd love to just hear from you. What actually is OCD and what are maybe some of the misunderstandings that most people have about it?
Oof, such a loaded question. But first of all, Matt, I really appreciate you having me here today. And thank you, Helen, for connecting us as well. I'm so excited. And this is something I'm super, super passionate about because it's so misunderstood.
Right.
But OCD generally is the obsessions that we have, and I can go deeper into what those may be, and the compulsions that we act out to kind of minimize the discomfort that the obsessions bring. And so, for example, we could have an obsession about germs. And so in our brains, doing things like washing our hands for a certain amount of time, trying to do something to minimize the anxiety that comes with, coming in contact with germs, avoiding certain places, people, things. A lot of people, I think, get confused on the word obsession because we kind of use obsession as like a positive thing. Like, oh, I'm so obsessed with this show. If it's not something that brings you joy, it's not considered, an obsession in OCD. It's more so an obsession that your brain can't let go of. And so you act out these compulsions to minimize that discomfort. A lot of the misconceptions that people have are just cleanliness and neatness. And I know many people in my personal life who have OCD who are not neat and they're not clean. It's more so, the obsessions that they are, ruminating on in their heads and doing things like, it could be tapping, it could be rearranging, it could be cleaning, it could be walking in a circle 5 times because your brain says, if I don't do this, and everyone I love is going to die. So it's a very catastrophic thing to deal with. And the sufferer is really suffering quite extensively to the depths that many people may not understand. And so I'm very passionate about it because I got diagnosed at the age of 10, but I lived my whole teenage life without knowing that what I got diagnosed with was actually what I was struggling with. I thought, just like everybody else, that I was OCD because I was clean and neat. But that's just a byproduct of my personality and my upbringing. Whereas the things that I was really struggling with was fear, avoidance. There's so many different themes of OCD that I was struggling with through my teenage life. And then at 19, to, I basically went to my doctor and was telling him my deepest, darkest fears. And I was like, he's going to throw me into either a hospital, or he's going to call the cops and put me in the back seat. I have nothing to lose. So I'm just going to tell him because I have no life right now. And he
Wow.
looks at me and he's like, you are diagnosed with OCD. You know, they diagnosed you with this at 10, right? And I said, this is OCD? I said, I had no idea that this was OCD. Like, I thought it was just because I'm neat and I'm clean. And he said, no, this is a very, very hard thing to deal with, and that's what you're dealing with. And so, like, that was like a huge realization for me. And I became very passionate about sharing that because many people still don't know what it is.
I mean, you said there that you had nothing to lose because you had no life. And this is one thing that I've come to learn is that it is such a debilitating disorder. And I think one thing that I
Mhm.
had no understanding of before speaking to Helen on this is the depth of like the intrusive thoughts that people can have and
Mhm.
how that can then manifest in their life. Do you want to just touch upon that so that anybody that's maybe not heard about that before, you know, when we talk about intrusive thoughts, how can that play out for somebody with OCD?
So many people, I would say most people get intrusive thoughts, but they don't realize that they're intrusive because they're able to let them go. Someone with OCD is not able to let them go. So we have thousands of thoughts a day, and someone with OCD, our brain will red flag it. And then once it's red flagged, there's no way of really letting go of it. It becomes really hard to. So, for example, when I was 10, I got injured in a football scrimmage map. But here in America, like football, we took, your football and tried to make it into American football. So, but that's the kind of football I'm talking about. And I got hurt in a scrimmage. I was playing, pee wee with, all of my friends, and um, I was the quarterback, and I got injured, and so my arm got severed, like wide open, like down to the muscle from a chin strap clip on the helmet. It was a metal clip, and so that kind of started everything because my parents weren't at the scrimmage. My dad was home painting the house, and my mom was at my brother's practice. And so in my 10-year-old brain, it was, I got hurt because my parents weren't there, because that was the first and only practice that they missed. And so that my brain made a significant event out of that, on top of already the fact that my arm was like, wide open. So that was the beginning. And so as soon as you start to have intrusive thoughts and you don't realize that they're intrusive thoughts, you don't realize that they're not all true, you start to believe them. And so that was the beginning of any thought that I would get that caused any sort of stress or anxiety, my brain would completely hold on to. And so I learned to become afraid of my thoughts. 6 months later, we have a house fire, and I attributed that house fire to me because the night before, my mom told me it was a school night, and she's like, "You need to go to bed. Um, you have school in the morning," and I wanted to watch a football match. And so I was so mad. I'm 10 years old. I was so mad. I was like, I hate this house. I hate my room. I hate my bed. And then the next day, we lose it. Half of the house is completely gone in a fire, and we ended up spending the next year in a mobile home. And so I attributed that for so many years to the fact that I said and thought that I hated the house. And so that kind of only fueled my OCD and my intrusive thoughts. So any really thought that scared me, and it can come up randomly. We all have random thoughts, but the ones that scared me were the ones that held the most power. And so I spent years in that cycle of just, oh, any thought that, made me question myself or my reality or who I was, whatever it is, caused a great deal of anxiety, and I couldn't let go of it.
I mean, that's just so unbelievable to imagine that you're there thinking that your family home to burn down.
Yeah.
But to
Yeah. And it
you, that
was a
was,
gas leak. It
yeah,
was
okay.
literally a gas leak.
Absolutely nothing related to you, but you carried that right forward
Mhm.
and this belief, and you had this strong attachment to it. I think it's great that you are speaking about this, and I think it takes a lot of courage because, again, something I spoke with Helen about is you feel like you're thinking some of the worst thoughts, or you can, for certain people with OCD, you feel like you're thinking about unimaginable things, and to share that and to say that out loud, like you said, you were scared that either the police would come for you or you'd be taken off to hospital.
Mhm.
Where did that courage come from to actually start speaking out about this? And I'm also thinking about anybody listening to this right now. We all have a story, we all have a voice, we all have a message to share with the world that can help others and can also help ourselves in our own lives. But so many people don't have the courage to do it and they don't act on it. And especially with, these intrusive thoughts and OCD, that really takes courage to share that with the world. Where does that courage come from, and how did you have that courage?
That's a great question. Initially, it was fear because I couldn't take living in my own head without having some sort of answer. And I think at 19, when I had harm OCD, which is this fear that you're going to lose control and hurt yourself or hurt somebody else. And it's interesting because people who have harm OCD are the least likely to do anything like that because we value our life so much and we value the people in our lives. So the first initial thought of, oh my God, what if I just lost control and like slit my wrists or like slit like something or like hurt somebody and I didn't even, want to do it. That causes an extreme amount of anxiety. And so the first time I started having that thought, it was after one of my friends in college uh, took his own life. And so that was like the trigger for me. And I grew up Catholic. I grew up in a Catholic household. And so to us, it's like, oh, if you take your own life, you go to hell. That's it. And so that created so much pressure where I was like, what if I do it and I don't even want to? Like, what if I lose control? And so that's where the basis of it is with OCD is how do we lose, what if we lose control? And the whole thing about OCD is having control. So that started it for me. And that's one of the reasons why I went to my doctor because I was like, I'm afraid I'm going to hurt myself or hurt someone else. And so if he hadn't known that I had OCD, he probably would have admitted me to a hospital because if anybody says that, it's a red flag, it's an alarm. It's like, oh, they're scared. And but with somebody with OCD, it's a different thing because they're afraid of that happening. So
Mm.
they want to do the exact opposite of that. So when he said, "Well, that's harm OCD. That's part of your OCD, and we got to figure out how to manage this." That changed the whole game for me. So once I was shown compassion, I wasn't judged. I was talked to as somebody who was cared about, as a patient, as somebody who really understood OCD. That was the turning point for me at 19, and I was like, "Oh, so you're not going to throw me into a hospital because." This isn't really what I want to do. Is that what you're talking about? And he was like, yes, exactly. He's like, I'm going to help you deal with what this is. So, and this was my pediatrician. This was not like a therapist or a psychiatrist. I had not had a psychiatrist and I had a therapist at the time, but I didn't tell her any of this really. I was really scared to talk about this. So it was at that moment where I went to my pediatrician and he was the one who got me on medication and got me, in the right direction. And once that happened, I started to open up about it more because I started to understand really what it was. And I was like, oh my God, I suffered for so long not talking about this. And there's so many other people that I'm sure probably suffer just like this. I need to talk about this in some way. So that was really, it was fear initially, but the
Yeah.
acknowledgement was huge.
But also, what I hear, it kind of highlights the power in speaking to others, in getting support, in having help. And also, and for anybody listed that has that fear of not speaking out and not sharing the message with the world, I heard you say kind of like at the end there about it's sort of like other people are suffering and sort of making it about the importance of helping others rather than fearing what people think of you. When we shift that, that's can be huge for people is to go stop making this about me and judgment and people are going to hate on me or what are they going to think of me and just go other people are going, and everybody listening to this right now, we all have things we are battling, we struggle with, we have overcome, that other people right now, just hearing you speak about that and how you overcome it will help them. So we have to kind of flip that and sort of shift to serving others, I think, rather than focusing on the fear of what others will think of us. And what I love about you is that's exactly what you've done. Despite OCD and the challenges you've had, you've still gone on to be super successful, really successful in the music industry and with building your online brand and being an entrepreneur and things like that. So what I would love to hear from you is just what are some of the management techniques? What are some of the things that have helped you not be defined by OCD and not be held back from still achieving success regardless?
Thank you so much. Those are very kind, things that you have said. So I really appreciate that. The last 5 years, I learned so much about myself in my, later 20s. And a lot of that has to do with learning how to deal with OCD as an adult in the real world. So I think for me, I had to separate my who I am from my OCD. I always thought that what I was thinking, my thoughts, my fears, those were me. And really, it's just a byproduct of the way my brain works. A byproduct of OCD. It's a chronic thing. I'll never not have OCD. It's just about how to manage it. So that was the first thing for me. I remember reading The Power of Now, which Eckhart Tolle, and that actually triggered a massive existential crisis for me. And if you have existential OCD, it's like 10 times worse than a regular existential crisis. So that was like by far the worst for me.
Oh, wow. Tell us about
And
that. What was
yeah,
it that happened there?
because I grew up in a very small town, like Roman Catholic area. And so I never really was able to leave that box. And so reading that book at a time where I was changing medication at the same time. So it was kind of like a vulnerable time for me. Opened up my eyes to so many things I've never thought about. And so I started to figure out that everything I attributed to who I was not really me. It was just parts of me at certain parts of my life because of other people, because of the society we have. And so I started to wonder, like, well, if everything about me is changeable, who am I? And so I had nothing to hold on to. I really had nothing to hold on to. And so OCD thrived on that. It was like, you have no answers. We don't know what we're doing here. There's thousands of religions. Which one's the truth? And so I started to go down this cycle, and I was very disassociated. So I didn't feel like I was in my body. I felt like a cartoon. I felt like reality had a barrier between itself and me. And so dealing with that was really hard for me. I was 25 years old. It was like groundbreaking, but I'm so thankful for it because I have a much broader sense of the world. I've been able to travel after that. I'm so thankful for it because I see people with so much more empathy and so much more sympathy as well. And I completely am a different person than who I was in my early 20s because of that. But what ended up happening was I started to dive into my discomfort and dive into the things I didn't want to do. So with OCD specifically, a lot of it is reassurance seeking. I was Googling for 8 hours a day about trying to figure out answers in Buddhism. And like all of these different things of me trying to find answers to who are we and what are we doing here. And so that became really unhealthy for me. So diving into the discomfort of not having answers, not Googling 8 hours a day, showing up to work and showing up to do the things that I need to do, even though I feel like absolute trash, trying to move in the discomfort. You and I talked earlier about dancing with discomfort. I'm like, okay, if this is what's uncomfortable, then I need to lean into that because I've spent my whole life running away from it. That was the big turning point for me. And
And I
learning
think
how
we
to
can
deal
all
with
learn
things.
from that as well, because I think often, it's a natural human instinct to want to avoid discomfort, but
Yeah.
usually growth progress, achievement, success, all these things come at the end of leaning in to discomfort. And I think it's a really important reminder that we all need to reflect on, are we avoiding the things that are going to actually help us just because they feel a little bit uncomfortable and a little bit scary and they don't come easy? I think an important thing to discuss on this, Tyler, is for friends, family, loved ones of people with OCD. Have you got any advice and tips on how they can best support somebody? Because again, I think it can be hard to know what the right thing to say is, whether to reassure, whether to challenge, because a lot of what the thoughts are often irrational and they're not logical, right?
Mhm.
So as the friend or the person who cares for that person, the obvious thing might just be like, "Oh, well, it's obviously not true. Like, obviously you didn't cause the house fire. Is
Right.
that useful? Should we do that? Or what's your advice?"
That's a great question. I think about this from my mom's perspective because my mom is my rock, and I spent my whole life going to her for reassurance. And she, of course, as a mother, she wanted me to feel okay. She wanted me to feel comfortable. And I give her so much credit because she reassured me to know, like, she would hear the same question 50 times and be like, Tyler, we talked about this. Like, of course not, but that actually is worse for someone with OCD because it keeps you in the cycle. No answer, no amount of reassurance can satisfy OCD because there's always another angle. There's always a but what if, and there's
Oh,
always
so it
a
keeps you searching for another
yes,
another way, right? Rather than being able to
yes.
cut it dead.
Yes, exactly. So I think there's a balance between wanting to comfort someone and also wanting them to get past those hurdles. And so for someone who's struggling, and someone who's got a loved one who's struggling, I would suggest it's okay to seek assurance that one time or two times of assurance. But after it's, two times, there's ways that we can respond. We can say, well, we've talked about this already. What do you think? Or maybe not. Um, trying to switch from here's the answer to, okay, how are you going to deal with the discomfort of not having the answer given to you at this moment? So the more that you teach the sufferer that discomfort is not something to be afraid of, the more
Mm,
they can teach their brain that. Because the more that they seek reassurance, the more they only feel safe when they have an answer, and they continue that cycle in the brain of we're only safe if we have answers. So we
right.
have to break that down and say we're still safe if we don't have answers too.
I think this is a key one for everyone to reflect on because I talk a lot about the teachings of Tony Robbins and how he speaks about the six human needs. And I say, one of the needs that we all need to meet is certainty. We all want a feeling of certainty and reassurance. But also, what I say to people is one of the worst needs that you can value high on your value lists is certainty because the world is full of uncertainty. So if you're going through life really valuing needing to have all the answers and needing to know the outcome and all that kind of thing, you're going to screw yourself up, right? So the alternative is starting to be okay with uncertainty and go, I don't have the answers and that's cool. I don't need to know everything to still have an amazing, fulfilling, healthy, successful life, right? So
Correct.
I think again, there's so many themes here that what you're touching upon, with or without OCD, that we can all learn from and that are important to reflect on in our own lives. I'd love you to share, if you're happy to, about I know that you're speaking here on how you manage it and how other people can support and can help. And I think again, something we all relate to, whatever it is that are our challenges in our life and our personality types and disorders, and whether it's anxiety disorders or whatever, we all can learn techniques and ways to manage and best show up in the world. And I always talk about progress, not perfection, because I don't believe perfection exists. So as much as you can do all the self-development work, all the therapy, read all the books, we're still going to be human. We're still not going to be perfect. And frankly, we're still going to have really, really shit days. And no doubt in your example here, debilitating days. I mean,
Oh
if
yeah.
you're happy to, could you just share like how bad does it get sometimes, and how have you learned to whether embrace or ignore, or what's your how do you deal with the really shit days?
That's that's uh that's a wonderful question. I think for me, for somebody with OCD, like before I was on medication, it would take me 20 minutes to a half hour to leave any room because I was afraid that I would somehow not turn the lights off the right way and it would cause a fire. And so just stuff that really didn't make sense. And so on my worst days, I wouldn't be able to leave rooms. I wouldn't be able to leave the house. And so I was really stuck to my own thoughts, stuck to my own reassurance seeking. Now, I would say my worst days are when I'm ruminating on health things. You know, I have health OCD. So that's really the worst, I think, for me. And the best way that I deal with it is I try to stick to my values. I try to tell myself, well, how would I act if I didn't have OCD? How would I act, or what choices would I make if I didn't have OCD? And so that actually plays a huge role into when I travel too, because I really don't like traveling because there's so many uncertainties. There's so many germs, right? So for me, it's like, well, if I didn't have OCD, I would just be excited to go see my friend. I would just be excited to get onto a plane like I used to when I was like 5 years old, and I would go and do what I'm doing. So trying to stick to my values is a huge one for me. You know, sometimes I'll even be like, oh, I don't really feel like going out for a coffee because like what if the barista, you know, was around someone who was sick and like they're making my coffee and then I'm like, yeah, but I want coffee. So I'm going to go get some coffee. And so trying to live in that and trying to live in the fact that I've been in so many worst case scenarios in my mind. I've been in so many worst case scenarios in life. And I'm like, I'm still able to show up for myself and I'm still able to do what it is that I value. That's important to me because
I
I'll get through
absolutely
the
loved it.
rest.
All right, hang on. This is something everyone needs to write down, right? So ultimately, what I'm hearing you say here is values over emotion, like values over feelings. Like, yes, I feel fearful. Yes, I feel whatever that is, demotivated, tired. We all have those things, right? And in those
Mhm.
moments, it's about coming back to, irrespective of how I'm feeling, what do I value the most? You know, what's the person I value being, irrespective of these emotions? And how did they show up? What did they focus on? And I just think everybody needs to take a moment, write that down as a main takeaway from this conversation today. Whenever we're struggling, whenever we feel we're not the best version of ourselves, we need to come back to that. And also, equally, sometimes that'll be more effective than others. Sometimes you go, do you know what I value? Just telling the world to screw itself for a few hours because I just need to chill. I just need to take some time out. And that's okay too. And it requires self awareness, I guess, which is an ongoing thing to work on of when you need
Mhm.
to just actually allow yourself that break. And the other times where you have to go, come on, it's time to show up, put those emotions to one side and put the focus on values. And I think as well, something that I try and talk about and bring awareness to is when we are going through negative times in our lives and we do have challenges, I always say that there's an equal upside in every negative and every downside. If you find it and if you focus on it, you can see the positives. Even when things are going crap and really difficult, you can ask questions. And I think questions are key. It's kind of what you said there about what do I value being a
Mhm.
great question. You know, you can ask, what is this teaching me? Or how is this going to make me stronger in the future or more experienced or more resilient? Or how is this going to make me better? So we can always find the good if we look for it. And something I know that you've spoken about that I thought was brilliant is there's some real positives to having OCD. And there's some great things about OCD. What would you say they are?
That's a it's really interesting to think about because it's such a controversial way to think and talk about it, but I've found that I don't know any other way of being. I mean, I remember being 6 years old having extreme panic attacks because I couldn't stop saying fuck in my head. Like, I don't know, can we swear on here? I'm like,
I mean, it's a bit late now, isn't it? I think we've both had our fair share. Certainly me, anyway.
Okay. Like I couldn't stop saying it because when I first learned the word, I came home and I said, "What's this mean, Dad?" And his reaction, like complete. My dad was a police officer growing up, and so his reaction scared me to no end. And I was like, "I'm gonna end up in jail if I keep saying this." I couldn't stop saying it in my head, and so
Just sounds like being in my
that's
head, to be honest. But
yeah. Well, now that's the case. Yeah. I think knowing that I really don't remember a time where I wasn't like that. So this is all I have to go off of it. So what am I going to do with that? Um, it's a debilitating disorder, and I feel so empathetic towards anybody who has it. But I know I can't just look at the bad. I can't just look at the negative. I have to also look at the positive. I look at that with everything. Even the positive has negatives too. So I have to look at that and I say, you know what? If I didn't think like this, I probably would not have the empathy that I am able to have for other people. I probably
right.
wouldn't write the way that I write. I probably wouldn't connect to people and be able to help others feel seen. So I have to look at that. I can't just ignore it.
I love this.
So
Yeah.
that's the way that it's a very controversial thing to say, and I've gotten
But why
backlash
do you
about it.
think why do you think
Like,
that is though? Why is it controversial to say
Mhm.
I can find real good in the bad?
I think because for people who don't know that there's another side to the other side to OCD, they feel like they'll be in that forever. And they're like, how could you say that this is okay? And it's like, well, I've been there. I've been to the darkest depths. Helen's been there. She knows. I've been to the place where I was like, I'm not getting out of this. And then to get to a place where I have, and I'm still like at a baseline of like normal living for my standards. Um, I can now look at it from a different lens. So I can understand the people who criticize it because they're so scared. They're so stuck and terrified. They're like, how could you say that? But also I'm trying to give them hope and say, listen, there's another side to this. There's a massive hill that you have to get over. And when you do get there, then you can see that there's another side to you and being able to empathize for others and help others through this because it's still so misunderstood and we need people to talk about this.
I think it kind of comes back to some of the things we've touched upon already, which is people avoid discomfort. And I think by acknowledging that if they do the work, they get the help, they get the support, there can be real positives. That's scary. As you've touched upon there, they fear it. So it becomes more comfortable and easy to deny that there's positives in this
Mm,
and that there's good. And it's easier to just stay, well, it's not my fault because it's my insert whatever that is, anxiety disorder, OCD. It becomes easier. And I mean this with nothing but respect to people. It becomes
mm,
easier to just stay a victim, to just say,
mm,
I can't because. And so now we make it controversial to say, yes, you can. Yes, you
mm.
can still succeed. And you're an amazing example of that, that has gone on to do that. And I think that's
Thank you.
something really important to reflect on for everybody is where are we stopping ourselves from excelling because it's easier to avoid the discomfort that it takes to get there. For you,
Mm.
Tyler, I mean, we've not even touched upon the music career. 100,000 subscribers, tens of millions of views on YouTube. This whole amazing backlog of incredible stuff that you've done. I mean, I believe, unfortunately, the late Liam Payne did a reaction video to one of your
Yeah.
songs, and things like that. Just would you just tell us a little bit about that world, the success that you've had, and importantly, again, to make this as value led as possible for the listener, any tips on how you managed to build this incredible brand in the music space?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm such a huge music person. I think for me, turned to music as a coping mechanism, and I turned to writing as a coping mechanism after the house fire. And so I kind of merged both of those together. And One Direction, I mean, I loved One Direction when they first came out. I was in high school. I loved the Beatles. Like I grew up on so much music. My dad specifically was responsible from like the 50s to the 80s of showing me, and then YouTube was responsible for showing me the rest.
So
And
hang on, I got
so,
to ask the question though. In the 90s, right? You're in America. Have you actually
yeah,
heard of a band called Take That?
No,
This is insane.
no, I haven't.
Anybody listening in the UK are hearing, oh, he likes One Direction. Prior to them, there's the Beatles. Like the biggest boy band of all time in the UK is Take That. But it's true. Nobody in America knows about them. Anyway, I won't
No.
tell you why I'm upset about that, but please do continue.
I'm sorry. You know what? We're very America is very egotistical, and they like to just take what they like
Yeah.
and then leave the rest
And
out.
leave the
So,
rest. I can see Helen's
um,
put in the comments he likes Westlife though. So
I
okay.
do. I do like Westlife, yeah. So I was very heavily influenced by a lot of different genres, and so I was obsessed. This is the good way, the good obsessed. I was obsessed with recording, and so I downloaded free software, and do you remember Rock Band, the Xbox video game?
Yeah.
Okay, I took the microphone from that video game and I plugged it into my Dell computer at the time, and I started recording with that, and I was obsessed. And then that was around the time that YouTube was doing really, really well. And in high school, we did the X Factor. My brother and I, we sang, we sucked. It was horrible, but it was a great experience about failure and being able to move forward. And from then on, we said, well, why don't we just do it our own way? We'll make covers and put it up on YouTube. And so we started doing that. And then I met my best friend Mitch at the liquor store that we worked at. We were both stock boys, and I was 16 years old. And he said, "What do you do?" And I said, "I make videos." And he goes, "Oh, I like to shoot videos and edit." And so we got together and we started doing full production like music videos once a week, and we did that for years. And so we would look at the top 10 on iTunes at the time and be like, what's the top 10 song this week? And then we'd cover it, we'd record it, edit it, mix, film, edit the video, and then upload to YouTube all within a week. And so we did that for years, and the consistency of that, and also having the tools, I was able to record at home. I learned about audio engineering on YouTube and my own. And being able to do that with my brother and my best friend was just the best time in my life. And so we did that for a long time, and that was my life.
Can I just ask you about, you touched upon a word there that stood out to me. It was
Yeah.
the C word. No, not that C word. It was consistency, right? And
Yeah.
you also said years. And I know that
Yeah.
this is a big difference between those who succeed and those who don't. It's very rarely anything to do with ability or talent or vision or goals or dreams. It's usually that it takes a long time of consistently applying yourself before you start to see any decent results show up. So I just want to hear from you on that in terms of, if people are listening to this right now and they hear people like you come on my show and they share the story of how it started, what they went through, and then the amazing successes they've had. But they're on their journey and they haven't had these successes yet. And they keep being told consistency is key, consistency is key. But actually, in reality, they're like, I've been at this for a couple of years now. I'm putting so much time, energy, effort, money, passion, focus into this, and I'm not getting any major results. What would you say to them from your experience about how to stay in the game and keep being consistent when the motivation is low, when the self-doubt is high? What would you say?
Wow. I would basically first ask them to really be honest about if this is what they want to do and why they want to do it. Because I've been in the trap of doing something for a long time and really not wanting to do it, and
Mm,
just using the excuse of, I've been doing this for a long time and I should just probably keep doing it. So I think the biggest thing is to first and foremost ask, really, what do you truly want to keep doing this, and what's your goal? Um, in the terms for music, for me, I knew that I wanted to do it, and I still enjoyed it. And I had this just unwavering vision of the kind of music I wanted to make and the kind of people that I wanted to be around. And so that was really the ultimate thing that kept me going. And also, like, I had the longevity of it, like being 19 years old and realizing that like I could still do this for another 11, 12 years, and until I really reached something, kind of gave me some peace, because I was like, okay, I'm not really putting too much pressure on myself, but like it'd be cool if this happened in less than 10 years. And so that
So
was
having
one
having
thing.
a long game approach rather than
Yeah.
needing it now, which I think is massive.
Yes.
And what you're saying there about vision, knowing what this can become and wanting that. I think a lot of people. I heard Gary Vaynerchuk say something the other day on social media that I thought was great, and he was like, the reason that he said like every day when I'm running my businesses, I'm dealing with shit. Like I'm just getting
Mhm.
problems, issues. I'm putting out fires, metaphorical fires, and he's like, I love that. He's like,
Mhm.
I love that. The process of solving problems, I love. He said, the reason most of you don't love your business is because you love what it can do for you. You love the Lamborghini. You love the Rolex watch. You love the money. You don't love the business. And
Mhm.
that's the key fundamental difference. Gary Vee loves being an entrepreneur. You love music and the process of making music. If you're listening to this now, and you're just doing something because some guru told you do that and it'll make you money, and you're just doing it for the money,
Mhm.
you're gonna really struggle to stay in the game, right? You're not gonna have that staying power for 10, 11 years like you were talking about.
Mhm. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And for me, there was a point of no return for me. And it's interesting how it happened after we started to get success from YouTube. The problem was like we were so dreaming of hitting 5,000 subscribers, and once we hit 5,000, that felt so much better to me than when we hit 100,000.
Wow.
Because so I knew it wasn't the numbers that once we hit the 100,000, I was like, okay, like I'm not I was burning out way more often at that point. And so it changed for me at that point. So that's why I always say, like, really be honest with yourself and think about what it is that you want from this. And if you truly want it. And I have OCD, considering that OCD is the doubt disorder. I doubted everything all the time. And so that was one of the reasons why I burnt out so much, because I was like, no, I've been putting so much effort into this. I have to keep going, to the point where I was just like trying to just itch to get a song done, just to get it done, not even because I wanted to make the song. So that became very different for me as I went on. But I think that was a huge indicator for me personally.
I think something that we connect with that you've mentioned is something that's important for us to get out in this episode is the power of kindness. And I
Yes.
think for me in particular, with being in the businessy space and helping people make money and businesses as well as their self development and their mindset, it's something that's really high on my value list. Is you don't have to just, for example, I've been to events, businessy events, where it's like see everyone in this room as a potential lead, and I hate it when they say
Mhm.
things like close as many leads. It's all just about how do I make money rather than how do I build genuine relationships and how do I just do good and serve better in the world. What are your thoughts on the power of kindness?
The power of kindness is I think, my new measure of success, and impact is a huge that like I don't look at success as um, the way I used to look at it, which was monetary a numbers game. For me, it's impact. And so, uh, kindness to me has transformed my life. And when I look at other people in my life, because I'm a mentor, I mentor students with neurodivergent minds like myself. And so there's so much loneliness and so much anger and so much separation, especially with the young, that I see that anger and I see that resentfulness and I see all of that on a daily basis. And I always bring it to the table. I keep reminding them, like, what do you have to lose by being kind? Like you can be angry. You can feel all of these emotions that you have to feel, but does it mean that you have to act on it? You know, how is it what is kindness stopping you from in the world? Like what is kindness really stopping you from achieving? And so like that's really the message that I want to bring in any room that I enter is how are you being kind to not only yourself but the people in your life, you know? And I think kindness has kind of taken a back seat in recent years, and I think a lot has, there's a lot playing into that. And so I just want to keep bringing that to the forefront because I think that it's needed. I think we need more kindness.
Here, here. I completely agree. I think understanding, empathy, um, embracing other people's points of views rather than attacking them just because it's different and things like that. I think
Mm,
kindness always wins. And I think to anybody listening that's skeptical and cynical about being kind, because maybe they've got experiences that are valid where being kind led them to be taken advantage of, or, you know,
mhm,
which is what happens sometimes. And it's horrible, but it's a reality of life. I just think if you focus on you constantly being the best human you can be, constantly looking at how can I improve? How can I be kinder? How can I be better? How can I grow? You might encounter along the way some dickheads that
mhm,
see you as weak and take advantage of that. But if you keep on focusing on having high well-being and focusing on the things that make you stronger, you'll start to learn how to spot that quicker. You'll start to learn how to surround yourself with the good people. And
mhm,
by not just thinking, oh, I've got to kind of hold up a barrier and not let myself truly be kind and not truly let people in, you start to be a person that just opportunities everywhere. And you can see how you can make the world a better place, how you can improve
mhm,
relationships, and how everybody wins. I just believe in this mentality of every decision you make, you want to try and think, how can we all benefit? How can we all win? How can we all grow?
mhm.
So for
Agree.
me, kindness is really up there as one of the most important things. And I think in the business space as well, it's needed more than ever. I think,
Mhm,
and I just believe things come back. And we've all got our examples, right? I've had the whole believing people that have lied to me. I've had people steal money from me. I've had people scam me. I've had people cheat on me. I've had all
mhm,
that shit. And unfortunately, what happens to people is then they put up their walls when things like that happen. And then they
mhm.
don't let people in or they stop being kind. And I just think, how sad is that you're going to stop being a kind, good person because other people did wrong? So I just want to put
Right.
that here on this episode. Just say, anybody listening right now, keep believing in kindness. Your
Mhm.
past is not your reality. It's happened, it's done, and you might encounter other assholes, right? But the
Yeah,
more you stay a great person, the more that I just believe in the end, you win, the world wins, everybody wins. So
I agree.
this has been amazing, Tyler. Thank you so much. And I'm mindful that we
Likewise.
want to have time for the members Q&A in a moment. Before we do that, I've got a few. And by the way, we'll probably have to do a follow up on this episode if you're happy to do it, Tyler, because we've
I
not
would
scratched
love
the
that.
surface on the amount of stuff you could help people with today. But
Thank
we're just
you.
going to go to some of the general live questions that I ask all guess. And I can see there, Caroline. I just want to jump on that. Caroline Neild, who's watching live, has just put in the chat. She totally agrees. Hurt people, hurt people. I think it's such a true statement. Hurt people do hurt
Yes.
people, but she says kindness costs nothing. I love that. So bringing us on to the general life questions, Tyler, what is some of the best advice you've ever received in your life thus far, and why?
The best advice came from my dad when I was 9 years old. And he said, never let your ego get bigger than your talent. And he has said that throughout my life, but he first told me when I was very young. And I always had that in the back of my mind, and that always kept me in check. Like, why are you doing what you're doing? And what is it that you want to get out of this? Is it for your ego, or are you trying to do something different? Are you trying to do something better? So that changed me, I think. As a child, that changed me.
Beautiful. It just made me think on a previous guest we've had on this show, Dimple Thakra, who's a relationship coach. And it's a similar theme, it's a similar kind of message, which is in relationships, she says, choose love over being right. And it's that thing of, when we get into disagreements, what we're
Mhm.
focusing on is ego of needing to win the argument and be right and be heard. And she says, like, relationships blossom when you go, what's the aim here? Is it just to win a point, or is it to
Right.
share love? And I just thought that's a similar sort of theme that you was touching on, so I love that. The flip side
Thank you.
is, what's some of the worst advice someone gave you, and why?
I need to write a book on that.
Oh shit.
I think, I think, we've all been screwed, right? And I think two of them come to mind, but if I can give you one, it would be toughen up. The words toughen up, hearing that throughout my life, really made me ashamed to feel things
Mm.
and to open up about things. And so I think that being soft and being vulnerable is a strength. And I think that we need more of that. So I think the toughen up aspect, while it may mean a positive thing in terms of like, well, pull up your bootstraps and keep moving forward, I think that the way it's said, I think can be detrimental to people who really are empathetic feelers, and they actually need to dive into that rather than just toughen up and shut it down.
I couldn't agree more. I absolutely love that. The next question is, what was your biggest mistake and what did it teach you?
My biggest mistake, I've made so many, but I have a hard relationship with mistakes because I know that they put me on the path that I need to be on. I think not listening to my intuition is a big one. I told you a little bit earlier about the music, and I touched upon this lightly. I spent years doing some of the music that I was doing that I wasn't happy with, and I was tired and I was burnt out. And I just used the excuse after that certain point of, well, I've been doing it for this long, I might as well just keep doing it.
Mm.
Not listening to myself and not listening to my intuition of like, why am I burnt out? What's going on here? And I prolonged, I think, other aspects of my life for far too long because of that.
Powerful one. All right. So the ethos behind this show is very much aligned with the idea that traditional education only equips us so far. And that's why we've called
Mhm.
this Success School, because I believe like the main things that are going to help us thrive in life is number one, your mental health and your mindset. Number two, your physical health. Number three, financial health. And I think they're three topics, we don't cover a lot in school. So the whole mission with this show is to help people with those three areas. And in doing so, help them live happier, healthier, and more fulfilled lives. So as we conclude this episode, I just wondered if you was to leave the listeners with three truths, three tips, three lessons that if they take them on board, you believe they're going to be on the path to living a happy, healthy, fulfilled life. What would those three things be?
I think we touched upon a few of them earlier. I think my number one would be that kindness is not going to cost you anything, and you'll never lose by being kind. That's the first thing. The second thing I would say is indecision can be worse than the wrong decision. And the third one, I think, would go back to what I was saying earlier is there's strength in being soft. So I think those three, I live by those. And honestly, I've gotten so many lessons pertaining to those three things throughout my life that I could write a book on. And I think kindness, being strong in your softness, and also realizing that the wrong decision can sometimes be better than no decision at all.
Tyler, this has just been absolutely outstanding. Thank you so much for your time today. I just feel like
Thank
I just
you.
want to acknowledge you because you genuinely come across as such a beautiful soul that kindness is very
Thank
clearly
you.
just beaming through you, and that is so obviously important to you, and I really feel that speaking to you. So thank you for being so open, so vulnerable, for sharing, and for doing so in order to serve people at a higher level as well. If people are hearing about you for the first time and they're like, I need to see more of what Tyler's about, because we have literally scratched the surface today. Where are the best platforms? What are your handles? How can people follow you and stay in touch?
Well, thank you so much for saying that. I feel like I just want to hug you right here, but we'll
We're a
just,
long way
this
away,
is a
man. We're in
nice
totally
little.
different countries, but we can do a virtual hug.
I appreciate that. No, I mean, I'm on Instagram, Tyler Falcoa, Falcoa is how you can spell my last name. I'm on TikTok, at Please Excuse My OCD. Um, those two are like the really main ones that they can find me. I'm also on YouTube as well. If you just type in my name or type in please excuse my OCD, you can find all of it there. But primarily Instagram and TikTok are where they can find me.
Great. And of course, the podcast, which is of the same name, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Amazing. So do go check that out. And if any of you know of people with OCD, make sure they're aware of Tyler's work and go check out that podcast. Final question before we head to the members Q&A. It's the question I ask everybody. It's a topic you've touched upon already. Tyler, what is your personal definition of success?
Oh, it's impact. How are you impacting other people? That's like that is the golden rule for me.
Absolutely beautiful. Tyler, thank you so much, my friend.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you.